doing? Good, thanks. Hey, Wayne. Hey, Dana.
Do you have some specific questions?
Yeah, I'm down for each.
The pledge of allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call shows for the team, Mr. Miller. We did not have any written public communication, no communication from Ovid-Elsie personnel, and no communications from the public. So number 3, superintendent candidate.
Okay, I'm just looking for my piece of paper that I had in my hand a few minutes ago, and now I just want to give you a rundown of, so we had Michael's here in the room here waiting, and we'll start out with the presentation, and then after the presentation, we'll go right into questions. You should have the question sheet in front of you, and make sure yours does say Michael Dunn on the front of it, because the two sets are different. So I wanted to let anybody in the audience know there are feedback forms and there are question forms. If you have a question that comes up that you want to ask the candidate, when we get towards the end of the interview, I'll give a signal and collect those and then bring them up to the board president to read. Once both interviews are completed, we'll take a minute to talk about how your reference calls went on each, and then we'll also, I'll give you a chance to read the feedback forms, and then we'll just talk about each candidate, and at some point, you make a decision if you're ready to move forward with one of the candidates this evening. So.
And we're able to do follow-up questions?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, yes. So you have those in front of you, but if something comes up, you can ask follow-up questions, and then yes. Yes, we can do that. I apologize, I forgot that part. And I'm gonna look for another spot just to remind you what the question was that their presentation is on. I apologize, like I said, I had it all printed out, and it's sitting right there, and I set it down somewhere, and that's where I do it. So each of them are doing a presentation that should be about 10 minutes long, and obviously you can ask questions about that. And their topic was, I sent them each this, Ovid-Elsie last adopted a strategic plan in 2016. Please develop a presentation on your vision of what a strategic plan is, how you would develop one, and finally, how would you use it once it has been adopted. So they both have the same presentation, well, they're different presentations at the same time. So, any questions?
I got one question. Let's say Kenneth has a question, or has a question here. Any of us can ask a question as a
Yes.
follow-up.
Yes, yep, absolutely, yep. So, we're not quite as concerned about the time constraints tonight, because you want to know as much as you can about each candidate. I expect it will be done in the 75 minutes, we usually are, but, you know, if it takes longer, it takes longer.
And are we just going to follow the order without Mr. Miller here? His question would go.
Yes.
You want me to just read this?
Yes, President Woolley, if you could read his questions, that would be outstanding.
Yeah, give me a minute to make sure I'm paying attention.
Thank you for doing that. I'll assign the questions. And you can decide on someone else, but
It's fine.
typically that's what you do.
Just make sure I'm, okay. Okay. All right, so welcome, community members. Thank you for joining us for the second round interviews of the Ovid-Elsie Area Schools Superintendent Search. Please note that you, as members of the audience who wish to provide feedback, may complete an interview feedback form following the interview. All the forms are on the table, and after completion, they'll be copied and distributed to all board members. There's also question forms that we would take if you have any questions to ask. Now we'll proceed to our interview of Dr. Michael Dunn.
I didn't turn. Test. So wherever you want to move around to, I'll leave both of them right there.
Thank you. You too. I like the little team.
No, I didn't see you know.
I mean, go brief, but yes.
I don't even shake your should say, but. We're all shuffled, but that's not it. That's it. You don't move. Let's see if I, yeah. Okay, thanks for having me again. I'm Dr. Michael Dunn, and I'm going to do I was told 10 minutes, so I'll try to keep it as brief as possible, about strategic planning. So our filter, or lens, so to speak, for tonight would be looking through the what, the why, and the how. So pretty much what would be a strategic plan for Ovid-Elsie, and why should we have one? And what would we do with it? And then how will we do this work together? So in reality, a strategic plan is our roadmap for how we get where. So you wouldn't put money in a bank. You could. You'd put money into a bank. But the reality is, if you're really good about putting money into a bank, you want to make money from it. And so you're going to then keep an eye on it. You're going to have a plan, some sort of investment plan for that. That's what we're doing here with the strategic plan. We don't just put forth and say, hey, this is where we'd like to go, and hope to God we get there, because you won't unless we have an idea of where exactly we're going to go and the steps we're going to take to get there. So 2 parts. It's a roadmap for what are the goals we want to achieve, what will be those small wins along the way, and then what are these documented sets of decisions? What are the actions we're going to actually take so that we can ensure we actually get where we want to go? Because otherwise we're just driving down the road blindly and hoping we get to where we want to go, and we're 10 miles out in a cornfield, nice cornfield, but the deal is that's not where we want to end up. So, component-wise, yes, our strategic plan here would have a vision and mission. We're off to a great start already. We have a great vision, we have a great mission. I think everyone that I've met today actually lives and is trying to live and breathe that. I would also dare to say that we have beliefs and values, and I think for meeting the people I've met, we have a lot of that here already at Ovid-Elsie. We just need to make sure we memorialize it. We need to get that down on paper, so that when we do what we do, we can point to it and say, yeah, we do believe this. This is what we value. Heard a lot of that today. But we need to get that on paper. So again, way ahead in steps. Goals and objectives, absolutely. We'll have that as part of our plan. And then this is where it's key. This is where strategic planning goes off the rails, so to speak. If we don't have specific action steps in our plan, if we don't have actual indicators of what it looks like, we will never achieve it. Having done strategic planning many, many times, what happens is we get a nice little document, but we fail to achieve it because we haven't set forth what did that really look like. How did we go there and get there? So that is key. In any plan that we develop, we must have those pieces. So I like to believe, as a teacher, I like to see what the product would look like. So I have no problem saying I went out and stole. That's what good teachers do. We beg, borrow, and steal from every place else. So on the front end, this is what a great strategic plan looks like on the front end. It looks pretty. It looks great. It's everything we can point to. What's our vision? What's our mission? This is what we believe in. That's great. But there's a back end. That's the messy end. But we'll have this, but we'll also have this. And this is that, like I said, that messy part. It's the objectives. It's the actual indicators. And then there's some sort of measurement to it. And then we monitor it through some sort of mechanism like a scoreboard. This way, we all can point and say, we're doing this, but are we? Oh yeah, look, got some green on the board, we're great. Got some yellow, it's questionable. Red, uh-oh. Hey, Don, what's wrong here? We got to work on it. That's what a plan looks like. So why? Well, for us, it really would provide direction and focus from the board to the community, from the superintendent to the board, from the superintendent with administration to teacher leaders. You're picking up a pattern here. From teachers to students, and so forth. In the big picture, it's systems to systems. It allows each of those areas to work together and achieve what we're trying to achieve. It actually aligns those efforts and resources because you know as a board what we're trying to achieve and do. Administration knows, teachers knows, community knows. We all know, we point and see it, and this is what we're looking to achieve. Here's some specifics to it. as we make decisions, because we make a lot of decisions, what to buy, where we're going, should we look at implementing this? And a lot of times we like it, it sounds good, and we had a great salesman, but the reality is, does it go to the beliefs and the values? Does it really help us to achieve what we're trying to achieve? And is it one of the objectives we're trying to achieve right now? It may not be now, it might be 5 years from now. So guess what? We're not going to buy that. We're not going to do that right now. And those are tough, hard decisions. But they're easier to be made when you can point to a document and say, this is where we're at. This is what we're looking to do. Without a doubt, it enhances collaboration and communication. We all have something to talk about. We can see it, work from it together. Questions are right there front. Mike, help me understand. Why didn't we do follow-up? Well, we didn't do X, Y, and Z because as we're looking to achieve in the next 2 years, we're looking to do A, B, and C. Now, we can bring the committee back and reevaluate, but here's what we're looking at, because when we do A, B, and C, we get not D, E, and F, but we also pick up J, H, K, and L. So by year 5, we were hoping to do X, Y, Z, well, that'll probably be year 4. But if you don't do that, that's fine. We'll do X, Y, Z. And then I don't know how we get everything up to that. That is why we have a plan. It helps direct that decision making. And it does all the other things. We get accountability, we get improved performance, and we adapt and change. It's a living, breathing document. This should not be something we put on the wall, put in a binder, or we kind of talk about it. This is something we talk about every meeting, from every level, board to superintendent, superintendent to administration. We have this ongoing conversation. We report out on it. And we do that on and on and on. But the bigger why is this. These kids here in our community, these kids, one day are going to become these kids. That's 13 years. It's a generation and then some. You may not even be here at the board. I may not be here. I might have a heart attack getting working hard. But I guarantee you, these kids here, will eventually be these kids here. And what we do, that academic return on the investment, that's it. What we do matters. That's why we strategic plan. So how do we get there? Well, you can get there in a variety of ways. I've done it in a few different ways. I would ask of the board and the community that we do it through an appreciative inquiry method. And there's a reason for that. And I was, like I said, until I really got a good look today, I'm sold, wholeheartedly sold, why that is the right method for Ovid-Elsie. You can do a traditional SWOT, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But that's 50% positive, 50% negative. Because strengths, opportunities, that's positive, weakness and threats, 50% negative. This district, our district here, has so much good going on. The district I serve is larger, but I'm a little jelly today. There's lots of things that are continuing to happen here for the size of this district that I'm struggling trying to make happen back home right now. There's a lot of good going on. Lots of positives that we can speak to. Through an appreciative inquiry lens, we look at 100% positive. We look at strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results. We have a lot of good going on. We're going to get a lot better, and we're going to build on the good that we have to get better. So, 6 easy steps, pretty much, it's getting people together, focusing on, again, what do we do well, what are the opportunities that we have from what we do well. We're going to define some goals, and then we'll develop our plan, we'll have a scorecard or some way to monitor and measure, and then we keep reporting out on it. Now, I know that's a quick and dirty. What I have for you, because I have done this before, and I was trying not to go over 10 minutes, you have a detailed guide, step by step, of how an appreciative inquiry for strategic planning happens, and how I would roll it out with all of us here. So that's what you have in that second document, it's a step-by-step plan. So you can see, I do know I can lead, and that it's there. And even if you don't choose me tonight, you got something you can lean on and use regardless. So again, always about paying it forward. So to do a quick wrap up, why do we need to do it? It defines where we're going to go. It helps us to prioritize those actions so we can get there. And it does create success. That's it in a nutshell. That's what you can expect from me. That's what you should expect from the guy who's going to sit in his chair. Setting up step by step how we get there and making sure we do get there. Because there's no reason we can't get there. That's all I got for you.
Can I ask what you're jelly about?
Oh, yes. So we're trying to bring back, after about 20 years, welding and construction. And that's been hard. And we closed down that space, and now we're going to spend about $450,000 out of a capital projects fund that we're hoping to use for a whole different thing, but we're going to end up looking at the old space, spending $450,000 to reconvert that space that used to be welding and construction to bring it back. And Ovid-Elsie has been doing it for how long? And it's a successful program. Are we promoting that? We have lots of research embedded here with the program. That's just amazing. State-of-the-art broadcasting. I did, in Indiana as a teacher, I did speech and debate as a coach. And broadcasting was one of the many areas we had in speech. At my kids, when they had the state-of-the-art broadcasting facilities they had, I guarantee my kids would have went and had state champs and went to nationals every year. I mean, we barely competed. We did well in certain areas, but that was not one area we did well. We have phenomenal facilities with that. And I know, you poke or not, I get it. It's all poked on it. That's okay. Here's the deal. It's state-of-the-art facility. Kids are getting, they can leave and do something like that. I don't have that. I'm trying to build it. Again, that's just the tip of some of the jelly that I just, by the way, that's an term for being jealous. I try to stay up with all this. I'm 50, okay? I have a nephew, and he talks in this language, and so I'm picking it up.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
How many strategic plans have you put together?
Over my course time 3.
And how, are they 3, 5 years? What is the?
Usually it's a 5-year, and the idea is that you hope in year 3 you have made some gains so that you can start tweaking in year 4 and start that process again and overhaul it. I was very fortunate that in Plymouth we had to, as building leads, be a part of the leading of that. We had a 5-year plan, and in year 3 we had already maximized the outcomes of year 5. We got very lucky, but we also had great, I've got to give Dan, my former superintendent, great kudos. He had a great plan, we all helped to lead it and create it. And we were able to because we looked at academic return on investment. We looked at how are we spending our dollars, where are we spending the dollars. And we were able to get in year 5 where we never thought we would get in year 5, in year 3. That doesn't always happen, but that is a testament to, and I want to give him kudos, he's retired. But we also cut $1.1 million out of our budget, and we laid off staff. I didn't like that, no one liked that, but that's what we had in Indiana in 2011. And we still did that. You're done.
Michael, I have a question. So I've, in my past position, I have also been through some strategic planning a handful of times. And you did a great job at the what, the why, the how. You had the when, the timeline a little bit, the benchmarks for that. Internally, would you add the who? Because in my experience, sometimes when everybody's responsible, no one's accountable.
Oh, absolutely.
So as an internal mechanism, would you also assign a who?
Absolutely, because you can't have one person. By the way, I'm going to give him some kudos too. You got a great guy named Dan here. He does a lot. And, you know, that's a guy, you can't have that, right? You can't have one guy doing all those things. I mean, he does it for, but in a plan, you can't have one guy in charge. Everyone has to own this. Meaning, the board's gonna own a piece, I'm gonna own a piece, administration's gonna own a piece, teachers, but we're all gonna own something in this, right? Because otherwise, if we don't do it, and you do that, I'm glad you asked about that. Because that was just something I pulled as an example. But when we create it, absolutely we have to prove it. Because everyone has to have a piece and stake in it. Otherwise, we don't have community. We don't have total buy-in. So great question.
All right, well, do you want to take a seat and we can get started? Thank you for being with us again today. All right, so we'll all take turns asking questions. First one, post-COVID, schools have seen an uptick in behavior issues in children. What are your thoughts on how to curb this issue? How will you support teachers and administrators? How will you support students while also maintaining accountability?
So I think it's fair to say the kids we have today are not the kids that we remember growing up. And COVID, I think helped kind of shed a light on some of that. It's not that we like to blame COVID. It wasn't COVID. It just had to exacerbate the issue for us. And so we have kids who I think have slowly developed into this over time. What matters is that teachers need strategies. Now, yes, it's great if we have additional personnel and all that, but the reality is they need strategies and how to help and work with those students. And we've got to make sure our principals have those strategies and know how to teach those strategies and how to support those strategies and do it with them side by side. So during the pandemic, coming out of the pandemic, having been a principal at that time, that was tough. And we had some really clear issues with kids. What I know to be true is we have a great team of our special ed teachers, to other teachers who have had difficult students over the years, to the training that we've had. We were able to pull all that together and say, okay, what do we know works? And we start putting these individual FBA plans, these functional behavior assessment plans in place for kids, and we work with them. Now, the problem is that's not a cure-all. I want to make sure anyone who's teaching with that's not a cure-all, but that's one good step. We've also got to work with parents, and those are hard conversations. Parenting is different than what we're used to today. And like it or not, we've got to have administration who's willing to have those critical conversations with parents, to be able to say, I need you to be a part of this. And to give you an example with what we're doing right now, we have a student who is highly disruptive in one of my buildings right now. We're able to mitigate some of that because we've got a parent who's willing to not take off their work clothes and let the kid think the kid was going to go to work, she was going to go to work, because if the kid thought she was not going to work, he was going to do everything he could to stay home that day. Now, mom didn't want to do that. I don't blame her. She's done with work. She wants to go home, change, and be. But here's the deal: every day she does this, we have this huge problem. So we have to work with the parent. That's a hard conversation. But because of that conversation, we've got some results of that. That's what it's about. So I hope I answered. Sorry, there's a lot there.
Well, following up on you're saying the difficult conversations. I have an educator, so I at least the difficult conversations. What if your administrators are still struggling with that issue? How would you support them or facilitate them?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got to work together, and we work through our local RESA. Well, it's an ISC, but same thing. So we work with local RESA. We look through who is out there doing this other work, and we lean in and ask the right questions and look for ideas of how we can support. There's lots of good people at our ISD or RESAs. We have lots of good people that we can lean in, and local districts that are doing this about best practice. So again, we have that out there. It's just about seeking out and making sure we get people to understand what that knowledge is.
Okay, thank you.
Unfortunately, crisis events and trauma can happen in schools. How have you managed through crisis situations to ensure students' safety and maintain continuity in education?
So that is one of the many hats I wear right now in Kawashak, is I'm in charge of our crisis and safety plans. And so when we have an incident, for instance, like we have a child who brings a handgun to school, and we have to then work through that. That's my reality. And so we've got to ensure that we have plans in place. And by the way, I'm very impressed today with the tour of what we have for safety today. We're talking with Dan. But having good plans in place, the resources in place. So for instance, and I forgot, we have something different. It's called the night lock, but you guys have the boots, sorry, yeah, the boots, they even tie to alarm. So I get a little jelly on that because we're working on a pattern. So anyway, but you have all that, which is great. But you have a plan. Everyone needs to know the plan. They need to know how to use the plan. You guys have the same thing we do. You got emergency package, I call them backpacks, but you've got the Roman kits, which is what we have. And we've done training with our teachers on how to use those and use the term. No one wants to learn how to use the tourniquet, but we've got to do that. So you have all this training, you have all these plans, so that when the incident happens, unfortunately we have that where I work. So when it happens, we can enact those plans immediately, like nobody, like it's second nature, and so that we can respond, get what we need done, and then while we're trying to do that, we need to then make sure we're communicating out to our families. Now I know we want to get as fast as possible out to the community, but I'd rather be the person that said we kept our kids safe and everything was okay, and you've got kids walking out alive from the building, and you're just now learning about it, versus I took 30 seconds to try to figure out how we're going to communicate and get something out, while I wasn't focused on making sure kids were walking out alive. That is the reality. That's the sad, scary reality of what administrators and teachers today are facing. And so the idea is that planning, the enforcement of that planning, and practicing the planning, and then when you implement it, make sure we do it as with fidelity as possible. And we then communicate as fast as possible when we can, because the priority is making sure at the end of the day, I want to see all my kids walk out of that building alive. I do not want to be on the news having to explain why we had 4 kids coming out in a different way. By the way, I know it's so sad, but I want you to get lots of great things here about that, so you should feel safer at night.
Okay, tell us about a situation that required your current board's understanding of pros, cons, and alternative solutions to a problem. What was done by you or others to assist the board in its understanding of these issues?
So that's something we're currently working through. As every district, well, I'll say every loosely, but almost every district is facing declining enrollment. We know that. We've had this problem for many years, and we're at a place where we're going to have to right size to watch at, and that's going to come at a cost, and it's going to be hard. It'll be a pain point there, but helping our board to understand, working with my superintendent, I put forth every year, I create student enrollment data projections. So I know what the birth rate is, I calculate, I'm about 98% correct every year, about the exact number coming into kindergarten. We know what we've got with school choice, and we know how it works with this credit sharing problem at the high school. So we know exactly how much we're losing and why. And we're at a point where we have to have an understanding as a whole community, and they are, that we're going to have to close an elementary. We can't keep running 4 elementaries, because when you do the data analysis, there's no other district in our size range that has 4 elementaries. And it takes about another 200 kids in a district before you see 4 elementaries. So we're in a big world of hurt. We're going to have to right size. And we're not saying downsize, we're trying to possibly do it in right size, because we're going to innovate from this. And so we're at the first step. We're at the understanding as a board and getting that out to the community about what we're going to have to do that. The next step in this is working them through how do we then do what economists call creative destruction. you have the negative, how do you get the positive? We're going to have to destroy it. Yes, we're going to have to get rid of a school. But how do we then turn that into something positive? So we're going to have to innovate. We don't do grade level centers. That is the innovative piece. That's the creative piece out of that whole piece. So as we looked at it, I've got to work, and we are slowly working with the board about how we then right-size and then move to grade level centers. Because that's going to keep the sustainability regardless of the size.
If you get overwhelmed in a position and have to issue where you do not know the answer, whether it is budget, curriculum, behavior, etc., where will you turn for support?
I'll probably go home crying right here. I'm just joking. If you don't laugh, this job will kill you, so you need a little laughter, I'm just saying. What I learned today is this, and this is what I've always known to be true, and I said this the last time. Team is the reason that we do well. I can't know it all, and nor should I know it all. And if I did, then I should, you know what I'm saying, I should have a different title, a different name. That's not who I am. So in our district, I learned today, we have some great talent here today that do many, many things. So I have no doubt that if I come up to something, I've got a team here that I'm going to be able to work with and be able to help get answers. And if I can't and they don't have, together, if we can't get it together, then I guarantee we'll be able to reach out and figure it out together. There's always somebody out there that we can reach out. To give you an example, I know we're looking for a finance or a business person. I was talking to Dan today, and I just sent him the contact information. There's a guy who I know who is retired, and I said, maybe we should ask this guy if he knows of somebody locally that might be interested. And so that's what we do. We lean on each other. We work together as a team, because no one can know it all. And if you want me to know it all, I'm not your guy. And then I'll go home crying.
Tell us about a time in your professional life when you needed to be true to your personal integrity, even though there were or could have been negative consequences for you. In other words, tell us about a time when you had to stand up for what you believed in the face of opposition.
So I think the best piece of my education came out of Indiana Wesleyan, where we truly committed to that concept of speak truth to power. And that gets me in trouble sometimes, and I don't care. We have to be willing as leaders to speak truth to power. When I came in to Dowagiac, the board made it clear, as I said before, the board made it very clear, we had 18 years and they needed change. 5 years of spiraling, they wanted change. But yet, we had some old guard that were very committed to reading recovery, were very committed to practices that were not good for kids. And I knew I had to be the voice as the curriculum leader, as many others, to speak truth to power, to say, I know you did the best with what you had, thinking that was what you were doing was right. But it isn't anymore. That doesn't mean we're going to beat you up. Doesn't mean that it's what you shouldn't beat yourself up. You're doing the best with what you knew at the time. But we know better. And when we know better, we do better. And by God, if we don't do better, then shame on you, shame on me, shame on all of us. And so you have to speak truth to power. And I knew that was going to come at a potential cost of losing some trust, maybe some value, all that, because I'm brand new coming in to a team that I'm trying to build. That was rough. But as I said before, it's not the what, it's how. And you betcha, the how is a lot nicer than probably what I just spewed out. And that we were able to move, they were able to listen and hear. And there were some tears. There was some guilt. But again, we're all in. We are rapidly move. We are further ahead than where the state is, and I have to pause because if we get too far from the state, I can't guarantee what the state's doing anymore. So we gotta let the state catch up with what we're doing to Wajak, because otherwise we may veer off that path a little too far, because we're so innovative at this point with science and agreement, where we're headed. So again, that's where we're at, because we're still to the top.
All right, tell us about a time when you were confronted with a difficult, unexpected set of circumstances in which you lacked the answers. How did you deal with the circumstances?
I didn't have the answer. That is, that feels like it happens more than we realize. So, in Indianapolis, we had to work through a layered system. So, because it was, again, no, Craig's house, it was charter. So we had to work through, Indianapolis is the only mayor, by the way, that is able to authorize charter schools. So we had this layer, we had to go through a mayor's office, their innovation office, and all these other things. And then I had a charter network office in Chicago. Good guys, still good guys, but they just know how to play school, not run school. So now you've got all this going on. And so here we are, and I've got a charter management authority that does not understand Indiana law, let alone program and how we do things. And then I've got leaders in the field who don't understand why we're not going to get reauthorized, or some of the steps we need to. And I'm new to charters. I don't know anything about charters, I just know curriculum. I was hired to do curriculum use school turnaround, and it quickly led to more than just that, but that's what I was starting off as. So I had to quickly figure out who can I speak to without throwing red flags. So I can't just talk to the mayor's office of innovation, because as soon as I start doing that, they're going to know we don't have a clue, and then there's going to be a reason to absolutely shut us down. So I don't want to throw red flags there. I got a charter management office who was hard to work with and get a hold of, so it was a matter of, there's 40 different charters in Indianapolis. Why aren't we talking to their leaders? And that's what we did. We started networking, reaching out, and I said, hey, I know, you know Indiana Math and Science. I don't know about us. And they go, oh, you know. But as you made those connections, we were able to get good answers and then position ourselves in a place to then understand how we take that next step and go to the mayor's office of innovation. So we didn't throw red flags, and we were able to do what we needed to do. And then figured out how to communicate that to the charter management organization.
Will you hold down your power button? I think it might have been, and then it'll turn green. That way it's for sure on. There we go, just so anyone who's watching.
No, thank you. No problem.
Let's say your district is running a deficit budget that needs to be corrected. What steps will you take to do that? And do you have ideas on generating revenue rather than cutting services?
So we're currently facing that right now in Wajak. And our attack has been looking at currently what are we spending money on and how can we better spend that money? And can we identify areas or ideas? And that's just not like done at the table. That is a superintendent, a director of federal grants, that is our business manager, myself. That's where we're at right now. So many people at the table have this conversation. So we're putting our heads together to look at, and we have to identify what are some of the things we're spending money on. Do we really need to spend money on that? For instance, we spend about $20,000 to the Leader publication for a lot of advertising and some of the things. It's all print. That's nice, but does it need to happen? No. And so we started looking through these things. We looked at, we definitely need to do report cards online. Don't know why we haven't been doing that in the state. I mean, everyone's got one of these things. Why are we still mailing? Mailing takes about $3,000 to mail report cards. So I know that sounds a little chump change, but as we identified certain areas, we looked at right-sizing staffing. So instead of replacing staffing, we're able to, through attrition, kind of reallocate those positions and get what we need to cover. But that also brings a problem because we still got to figure out how to get enough electives and things for some kids. And so then we looked at our grant funding, and then we're bringing on some electives to grant funding. So we're able to then still run a good schedule and still save some money with staffing, and it doesn't hurt kids at all. So that's what we've done along the way. So if we were ever in that spot, we should be in that spot, but if we should ever get there, here, then we would start those same conversations. What are we spending money on? Do we need to spend that money on it? And then, how do we start, because the worst thing you want to do, and sometimes the only thing you can do, is to cut staff. And that's not good for anybody. It's not good for kids, it's not good for people, it's just not. So we should work to do everything but, so that when we get down to it, and if we have to make a cut, and have to make it, it's minimal. So the idea is for generating for the revenue. Without a doubt, looking at your school choice data, as I said last time, I think, and I could be wrong, I don't profess to be Jesus here, I could be very wrong, but I believe, and over time, we can figure out how to pick up about 20 to 30 kids in this district back to our school. I think we can do it. Not going to happen, and by the way, it's not going to happen overnight, but I think we can work to do that if we get a good PR marketing plan in place. And that's how we're going to regenerate some revenue. So I think that's one of the pieces. The other piece is we've got to be innovative and look at what is available in grant funding. So for instance, I know Ovid just did their 27H, it was last minute, did the 27H grant for some mentoring. Here's what we did with our 27H. We already knew X amount of dollars were going to be spent, we have to by the contract, every year, first year for teachers and mentoring. We continue in years 2 and 3 using our general fund dollars to do extra work. However, we don't really have the money to do that, but we do it. 27H came up, and we said, $87 million is out for all districts. We applied for $450,000 to take care for the next 5 years, year 2 and year 3, of what we typically do, which is not going to be, if we get our money, will be a cost savings to the district. So we just added back to the general fund. That was not expected. That's how we have to be strategic when we look at what we do, and not just randomly let's get this grant done. We need to be thinking systemically, strategically, long term. How can we use some of this to offset what we need to be done, but then save us money, so then we can use what we have to be done.
I got a question off that. You said that, if we start getting into the financial things, then we're going to start looking at the things, that you might be able to cut or do. At the school district you're at right now, are you guys doing that proactive, where you're already looking at it? So you look to the future and see that we may lose 20 students this next year and figure out how that works, as opposed to waiting until it starts going down? I mean, how do you do it at the place that you're at?
So I'm very blessed that Stacy, our finance director, keeps a good pulse. And so we have a good idea here, as we go through the year. And if we start to make change, as we look at what is the percentage of our encumbrances, when we look at what's spent, cash flow, the whole 9 yards. So the last couple of years, we've been, like I said, blessed to know that we're going to come in right about where we need to be. But this year, I want to say it's a surprise. This year, we've had some different offsets. From the teacher contract that was negotiated to some other things. Budgeting, not listening to the smart guy who gave you a budget number and budgeting the wrong enrollment number. Those things unfortunately happen. And so we now look at, we're reactive right now. But in hindsight, that is how we should be anyway. We should be proactively looking and say, and that's what the new superintendent should be doing coming in. It should be taking a good hard look at where is the money being spent. And I know the guy you got right now is now doing a fine, absolute great job. The point being is, we've got to do that. And the new guy's got to be able to be walked through that so they see, so that they can be as proactive as possible so that when it comes down to it, we're not in a place where we're having to have a conversation. It hit us out of left field that, oh, we didn't realize there was going to be $450,000 taken out of fund equity because we gave a huge raise for teachers. They did deserve it, glad we did it, but we should have been a little more proactive in knowing that, because it has now come out to be about 1.5 million is what we're landing on our deficit. So, yes, as possible. I will say, in a smaller district, it is harder though, because there's a limited amount of funds, there's only so much you can cut, there's only so much you can prioritize. So it comes to a point in smaller districts where that becomes really tough. It may not always happen, but we still do what we can.
I got a little follow-up on that. You mentioned a little bit earlier, and I think you mentioned it the other night, you mentioned about picking up 20 or 30 kids. Can you be maybe a little more specific on how you do that?
So you mentioned in your criteria, you wanted to do some PR marketing. We should be marketing this place. I told you I'm jelly for a lot of reasons. Do people outside, I don't want to be constant, I don't think there's, do people really know what we do here? Are we getting that out there? Because I think if people started seeing what we really do here and what we offer kids real world skills. We offer them real world, they leave from after the day of graduation, they leave with the ability to live, work in a real world. Isn't that where you want your kid to go? Why are we not, I mean, again, if you are homeschooling your kid, and I'm not saying homeschoolers are bad, you may do a great job, but if you're homeschooling your kid, why would you not want your kid to have some of these opportunities? Because I know you can't offer them everything in homeschool. You can't offer them welding. You can't offer, you might if your dad's a welder, you know what I'm saying? You can't offer them FFA. Why aren't we looking at targeting that and saying, hey, we're not just looking to, I don't want to say steal from other districts, but we're looking at, hey, if you're homeschooling your kid, yeah, you feel better about teaching math and reading, great. But also send them our way. Because when you send them our way and we pick up those electives, now that may change with the new law with homeschooling. We'll see how that works out so that they could do maybe the opposite, come forward reading or math. But if we can get them in, we get what's called a partial FTE. So we get some money for that kid. And yeah, it may be 1/7 because it's a 7 period. So you might get 1/7 of $9,000. That's 1/7 more we want to get in, right? That adds up. So those are the things we need to look at. How do we market and sell? We can. And we're at a great place to start. The social media and the web presence that Ovid-Elsie has is really great. We just got to kick it up a notch. We're going to spend probably not a lot of money. We're going to do some targeted ads on Facebook. Those are cheap. 20, 30 bucks, targeted ad. Promotes some of the posts. We just got to, but how do we know to do that? Strategic, I don't want to go back, but strategic plan. What's in the plan? If we're going to have a voc ed focus, we're going to have that focus, then absolutely it better be in the plan, and that's what's going to be the focus of what we promote. Otherwise, we're not getting what we need to get to. Did that kind of help? Thank you.
All right, explain your experience in special education and 504 plans and how those experiences translate into your role as superintendent.
So in this role, I tend to be more the good cop at Dwashek and supporting the unfortunately bad cop, our director of special ed, because she's the one who's got to do the job. And so there's times that she's not going to make people happy. So I've got to be the one on the back end to say, here is why the decision, I mean, you should have already understood why the decision was as a case committee and where we got to. But here's why our director is doing what she's doing. It's not because she hates you or she wants to punish you. This is what we've got to do. And I get that it's not pretty or no one likes it, but this is why. So it's that, what is the why piece? And helping them to understand why, what we're doing and how that translates. So that's kind of a lot of what I do on the back end without people realizing it because they don't always get it. Very well informed with special ed. We're very blessed here to have a principal who does it. I don't know how she slipped. She does special ed and as a building principal. So, but that's tough because we need to make sure the services and what we commit to, we're on the hook for that. And that's a financial cost. and it comes in some other different things. So when we create those, we need to make sure that we're identifying the right kids. And when I say that, I want to be very clear. What parents and other people don't understand is special ed is a deficit-based program. Once you enter special ed, you are no longer at the same rate and pace as a general ed kid. Yes, we say they're general ed first, but the reality is, special ed, once you go there, you are now in a deficit-based program. And now we're working from their immediate needs and their goals for those immediate needs, and we're then accommodating and modifying. So if we have a kid who truly is special ed, we need to understand what that means. Because just because a kid's struggling in class, the question is, are they performing close to their peers? What is the rate of progress? Are the interventions working? We have all these layers. And all the things I just said, I have made teachers mad as a principal, asking the same thing to them when they come back and say, well, I've done this, it doesn't work. Okay, I'm sorry, we do get it, guy, but what else have we done? And what does the success rate to that look like? And oh, by the way, when I look at the NWA data of this kid, although is low, when I look at the relation of peers, the whole group is somewhere between the 20th percentile and the 40th percentile. This kid's 23rd percentile. In relation to his peers, he's no different. We want to call this kid special ed. Why? Changing the address does not change what we're doing. The kid's still going to come up every day, so lots of experience with that. I'm working through the process to make sure that we identify who we need to identify, and then making sure we put the right supports. Because what I get tired of year after year is reading IEPs, and they have the same blanket. These are the same accommodations that everyone, no. An IEP should be set for. I should be able to, we can, I don't get that. I can put in small group help. I can put in extra time. I can do all those things without an IEP. I do not need an IEP to do those things. Those are called general education interventions. But yet somehow we feel that if I don't have an IEP, I can't do that. And so those are the conversations we have to have. So sorry, that's a public load in there for me. So lots of experience having to work and do that.
Okay, based on your past experience, please provide us with a specific example of how you get an experienced staff to follow policy or new policies.
So I learned this early on. I was 30, going on 31 as a building principal, and all of my teachers were 20 years my senior, and they saw me as their kid. And we were a failing school. They were used to doing it the way they used to do it. They've always done it that way, and don't get me wrong, great teachers. However, as the leader of a failing building, the charge was what? Turn it around. So I had to work, and sometimes it was one-on-one, individually, changing hearts and minds, helping them to understand what is it that we have to do, what is it we need to do, and asking that question, how is this helping us to do better? Because if we keep doing what we've always done, we get what we've always gotten, and obviously we keep doing this, why do you like beating your head against the wall? They hate when I ask that, and I know but speaking truth to power, we got to do it. And you can do it this way. But as a new principal, having to do that, and having to then, again, work through, and that was really rough as a first-year principal, having to point to board policy, we're going to do this, and then be the guy, the bad guy, to go and say, I'm going to follow up on this, and we're going to have some conversation about this. I don't want to write you up, but here's the thing. This is the policy. We're going to do this policy. We're going to expect this policy, and we're going to have some conversation about that. I wish that I'd done like 10 years after that could have been back at year one. Because what I got to learn in professional learning communities was that there's some great techniques in helping foster that. And one of those through pre-LCs is collective commitments. And getting on the same page with everybody. What do we collectively commit to? What is it we all say we're going to do and agree to? And then we use that as the document to hold each other accountable. That would have been helpful year one as a principal, as opposed to being the guy saying, I gotta figure out how we're all going to do what the superintendent said. And not have a dog and pony show when he comes in and go back to doing what we're doing, because we can't.
In preparation for interviewing at Ovid-Elsie, have you researched the district? After your research, what are some possible changes that you foresee making to have a positive difference in our school district?
So, yes, a lot of data that's there. So looking at what's available and what I've learned today, without a doubt, it would be making sure that we create that sense of community and team, making sure we bring everyone together. And I think through a strategic plan, that would be one good way to do that. But having everyone come together, working together, so that we can see the test scores. And I'm not just talking M-STEP, I'm thinking NW. We can see the real data that we know day to day. We can see that data get better. We can work with teachers on strategies because of behavior. We can do all these things so that day to day we build and invest so that over time we see the growth. I think we can do that. And I think Ovid-Elsie is in a good place and is ready to do a lot of that hard work with the right leader. Bring the right leader on board, champion, be the cheerleader in chief. I think without a doubt, we're poised to do some great work here.
Provide an example of a time when someone whom you supervised disagreed with you, and what was the outcome?
So anytime someone, or if I disagree with whoever, that's going to happen. We're never going to agree. So my previous superintendent and I had a very good relationship where we didn't agree on everything. And that was good for some things. But anyway, so we didn't agree on everything. And so what mattered was that we had the right conversations, though. And so I had no problem walking in and having the conversation and say, with my former guy, and say, I don't understand. Here's what I hear, here's what I know. Help me understand what is it we're trying to achieve, and why is this maybe the reason, why is this the way we're, what, help me, because I'm not seeing it. I'm lacking, and I just lean into that. You have to lean in, humble yourself, and listen. And so as we did that over and over, my guy would then lean back in and say, okay, this is what I thought was right. This is why I know to be right, this is what I thought was right. Mike, help me understand what it is you're not getting. Help me understand why you think. And so we'd start having some real conversation. And most of the time, I could get them on the right path so that it wasn't what we were experiencing for a long time, and getting to the positive. But there were times I would have to walk out and say, okay, I don't agree, but when I walk out that door, we're in tandem. It's it. I'm the same verbiage, didn't have to like it. And I'm not bad-mouthing the guy as I leave the door to everyone else. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. Don't have to like it. But that was very rare because we had great conversations. So that's what happens. You gotta have people that be willing to have those hard conversations and lean in, be humble, and ask. Help me understand. Is this the only way? What might be? Have we explored other ideas? And why didn't we? So that's the conversation.
Now, you answered that question with someone who's your supervisor.
Same, it works the same way.
Okay, and what if you were still getting pushback, and that, you know, that same approach was
Sure.
not welcomed? How would
It's
you?
good. It's not funny. I'm a boss, you do not.
Yeah.
No. So right now, as a coach principals, I have a guy, I love him to death, but sometimes we butt heads, and he's 6-something, so it's kind of hard to butt heads, if you know what I mean. But the idea is that sometimes we have to come to an agreement that you're going to need to try this, and if it doesn't work, then we have another conversation, and we can let you do it your way. But here's what I know. I didn't say his name. You've been doing it this way. These are the results you're getting. And oh, by the way, this is how your teachers are feeling. I know you like your teachers a lot. I know you want to do right. But, man, for the love of God, what are you doing, man? And so then he would be like, I think I'm willing to try. And it may not be what I suggested, he might come up with something different, and usually he does. And that's fine, I don't care what it is. What I need to have happen is I need to stop doing what we're doing, because it's not working. And so getting that to pivot. And so that's the conversation. Can you try doing this? And if it isn't, then but you're going to have to, because otherwise we're going to have a different conversation. And that's not the conversation no one likes to have, but guess what? That's what you also pay the person sitting in the chair to do, so you do that. Let's just hope to not have to do that.
All right. You kind of answered some of this already, but in the first interview, you talked about marketing to increase enrollment and that your district had increased enrollment. At the same time, your current district is running a deficit budget. Please explain to us how this happened. How many students did you increase? What have you done to reduce the deficit without cutting programs?
So what happened was we gained more than we expected to lose. So we were expecting about 50 a year. So it should be 50 a year. That is the data. And the 5-year trend and the 9-year trend are exactly spot on for retention rate. So I feel pretty good betting the 401k that data holds. So we knew we were going to lose. What happened was, because of the efforts we've been taking with some promotions, some PRs, and informal ways of going about what we're doing, we actually had less student school choice. We saw that tide turn, because we're way upside down in Washington, way upside down. Like if there's 300 kids that leave our district, we might get 100 in. So we're way upside down. What we've seen is that has changed. And so because of that, we've lost less than what we expected. So we picked up so we stayed about 8, which was great. But in the meantime, you have salary increases, period. That's on top of a new teacher contract, which exponentially increased. So that happened. We brought on some additional staff. I think again, I want to blame anybody. We just brought in some additional staff and thought we were going to be okay, but did not realize that the financial impact. And then on top of all of that, we also know we only got one-time money. Everyone got one-time money. The state's not looking to increase. We'll see how it works. Senate just proposed a huge, doubt it will happen, but we're going to see how it rolls out. Still, everyone's uncertain about what the new budget's going to look like. Probably won't be until August, September. But knowing what we know to be true about status quo and funding, and knowing that what we're going to be spending, if we kept where we're at, that's where we saw the deficit. And so now we're in a place of, okay, how do we recoup? How do we, so we don't continue to keep that? Each year gets a little different, because next year it's a 4% increase, then it's a 3% increase, so the increase in salary will go down, so that also helps go down. But that's where we're at. And we're now finally budgeting a reduction, because I've been saying we've had a reduction. Finally, I have someone who's willing to listen, and now instead of saying, oh, I think we're going to go with what I feel, we're budgeting for $1,750 next year. Where opposed, I would have had someone say, well, we'll budget $1,800. I know we're going to have $1,750. I bet my 401k on it. When I said we were going to have 1,800 kids this year, we had 1,803. I can't get any closer than that, guys. The data is the data. But if I don't have people listening to us to say, we're going to budget based on this guy right here who seems to, again, it's not magic, it is data, it's real data. So that's what we started. So because we started budgeting correctly and having some soft, we had this huge opening.
I guess I have one question with that, if you don't mind. It seemed, seems to me, if they paid the teachers more, and you didn't have the money to pay the teachers more, I'm not saying you did or didn't, I don't know, and then you added teachers also, or whatever it is that you added, that's going to make the deficit more if you don't have that money to generate. And it's going to be a continued deficit going out. It might go for 4, but you're still going to have 3 and that. Is it your business administrator just missed it on the whole targeting as far as, like you said, the budget, as far as the number of students that you have? So he's going in 2,000 and you're going to only have 1,900? I mean,
So, what I would tell you, Dr. Hupp, I would love to give you an honest answer, but I'm not gonna do that on the mic.
okay, that's
But
cool.
I absolutely will tell you,
No, that's cool.
and you all can join that, but I'm not gonna put that on the mic.
Nope.
But there is a, and it's not a business person.
The next one was a follow-up question that someone already asked, so we can go to number 14.
Ovid-Elsie has relatively new and brand-new people working as business manager, curriculum director, and in human resources. Explain how you would onboard or orient these people into new positions, especially with you being new to the district.
So with my background, I would want to start, and I've got to know a little of them today, which is great. There's a lot more to learn about them. And so we start looking at what do they do know, what they feel, and having conversations with them from day one about, tell me about where you feel your strengths are, and then tell me where you think you're weak, or where your growth is, whatever you want to call it, where that's at. And then we're going to look at what can I help with, and then what maybe the RESA can help with, and what others around us can help with.
Can I add
Yeah.
one thing to that? Sorry. But, and you have experience, I just want to make sure, with business management, curriculum, human resources, right? So you dealt with that.
I will tell you, I'm not your guy who can know how to do exact everything in business finance. I know school finance, I know exactly how it works, but if you need a guy who's going to actually be in the actual budget day to day, like our business generator does, and is in there, that is not the number one strength that I bring to the table. That doesn't mean it can't be learned. It doesn't mean you wouldn't learn it. I'm just saying that you have to have someone who's in the books every day. That is not something I do. I understand how schools are funded. I understand how we allocate. I understand object code. I get all of that. And how we monitor, and how we expend all of that. But when it comes down to the actual nitty-gritty, I would make a bet that most superintendents don't know the nitty-gritty unless you are the guy doing the nitty-gritty. So that is, like I said, would be number 3. Human resources, I do that all day, every day at Dewar-Jack. I'm the guy, unfortunately, talks to bus drivers. When I had a guy pee in the field, had to go have, we had to have that human resource conversation. When we have a kid who's done Title IX, guess who gets to do that job? Yep. So all of that, yes. That's all in my wheelhouse. Everything is.
Okay, we're getting there to the end.
Sorry.
That's okay. As superintendent, you have 7 different bosses with possibly 7 different views on how to manage a district. What will you do to proactively get the 7 individuals to work with you as a team? Explain what you will do to create a high-functioning board.
Well, first and foremost, I would hope to have the opportunity to meet with you individually, get to know you, lunch, whatever, breakfast, and learn about with you, priorities review, all of that. But after that, that's why a strategic plan is so vital. Because you're right, there are 7 different people, 7 different bosses, but at the end of the day, we have to have something we all can unify our vision through. And that's why the strategic plan is hugely important. So that at the end of the day, you may not agree, but you at least back up and say, I understand why we're doing this, this is what we're blah, blah, and I'm gonna give Mike a little grief about this just because it's my thing, and that's okay, and I'll take it, and he knows I'm gonna take it, and then at the end of the day, I know you're gonna do this because this is what we're trying to achieve here. And then going forward, absolutely bring that to the table and say, well, how might we, is this something of value, do we incorporate this as we move forward, right? And 6 other people might say, no. Or they might go, there's a merit to that, right? But that's why the strategic plan is so key. It helps focus you, it helps focus me and everyone else so that we can be on the same page. On top of all that, strategic plan or not, we should be sitting down and creating goals. And you need to do that regardless of who sits here because that's part of the evaluation of the superintendent. But we should have goals. And we should be able to know what those are and meet on those periodically and talk about that. And again, having something to drive and filter the conversation and the focus. I think it's how we do it.
All right, we do have 2 questions from the community before we ask the end. First one, if the district has an above average fund balance, would you utilize those funds and how would you prioritize that spending?
I'm going to say the unpopular answer in the room, which is no. Here's what we need to understand, and it took me a long time to understand. You need to have, regardless of the size of your district or budget, 16% fund balance, just to make sure you have cash flow. You don't have to worry about borrowing, you don't have to worry. You have 16%. 15, it would be okay. 16% is like the sweet spot. Once you're at that percentage of a fund balance, you're not sweating at night, worrying about the tax coming in, or worrying about the ADM, call it ADM, the FTE in Michigan in October coming in. We're not sweating that because we know we've got cash flow. So once you get above that, the question is how much of that are you going to, if we ever decide to spend some of that, the question is it sustainable in what we spend? Because if it becomes part of what we got to budget for every year, that then increases expenses and the revenues are not meeting. So we can't be, unless it's something, for instance, like, I'll give you an example, we're going to do one-time budget expense for welding and construction. We're going to pull that out of our fund equity. Is that going to offset any problem with expenses next year? Nope, I'm already paying the teacher, already paying the electric, already paying, I just need a one-time. That's an okay hit to the fund equity, fund balance. But we're going to bring on we want to bring on new staff. Great, but how do you pay for that year after year? Because that just increases. So those are those hard conversations and helping people understand that. Yeah, we may have excess, but we got to be able to sustain that. And if we can't sustain that, don't touch it. Because unfortunately, there's going to be a day, and I hate to say this, I don't care where you're at politically, I think there's a day in the next 4 years, schools are going to spend that fund equity. Because they're not going to have the money coming for whatever reason. And we'll probably get it back. But if we don't have it, that's going to be a problem. And Indiana's already seeing that. So yeah, so.
You hold it, it should turn green.
Yeah. There you go. So yes, it's nice to have that, but we've got to be very strategic. It's not a yes, it's a no, but.
Got lots more.
Sorry.
All right. What can you do to show teachers that they are valued and appreciated?
Give them a sticker. I'm joking. No. I don't know why looking back, I don't know why I know why I went to teach, but knowing what we have today, I don't know that I would have went into teaching today. We give them a lot of crap to deal with. And the only way I know, I do this with my own staff, and they're mine, I call myself. What I know to be true is that you have to learn. I'm listening to what you said. Hold it, that's great, right? What I know to be true is you got to learn the love language. Some people like accolades that are out there. Some people like just a pat on the back. Some people want a little just time. Whatever it is, you got to figure out what the love language is, and then we got to do that because they do a hard job. And so one of the things I like to do is I get out in those classrooms, I force myself to get out in the classrooms, because it's easy to be in my office and do the hard work. But I get out in those classrooms. I'm gonna try this again, I'm sorry. I did not, I wrote it. Maybe I talked too loud. Maybe the mic is sensing I talked too loud and it shuts down. But I get out in those classrooms, and not only do I get out in those classrooms, because it's not like trying to do a gotcha, it is, they do great work. It is miracles of what they do in those classrooms. And so when you get out there, and then you gotta remember to leave a positive note once in a while. You gotta do that. We do, what we did in Dwajik is we have a Google form where anybody can submit something positive. And so we've not been doing that lately because teacher appreciation is coming up, so we're saving those to do a huge thing next week. But we got lots of people who want to say good things about what we do. And guess what? We put that on a form letter, it prints out who said what to the teacher, we sign it, we get those right out to them. I have teachers who have those stapled on their bulletin boards. I know it's just a little simple act, but seeing and hearing them and acknowledging them, that's why they sign up for a reason. They have a passion. Same reason I show up every day. That's what we do. So how do we keep supporting and building them? You got to be out there, and you got to be with them and support them and cheer them. That's why I call it cheerleader in chief. You got to keep cheering them on top of everyone else. It is tough work.
Okay, the next one, our schools and some athletic areas have problem areas where items need to be updated, repaired, and changed. How would you go about finding what all of these problems are, and then what would you do with this list?
So I think the first step is that part of the strategic plan? Is this part of where we want to go and spend money? So it's got to be part of that conversation. Is this where, and by the way, you're going to have a stake in that. People between you guys have a stake in it. Everyone's going to have some voice to that. But the point is, it's not Mike Dunn who's going to go around and create a list and say, hey, we're going to spend money on. But you got to make sure that we all are good on that's what we want to spend money on. As I said before, you're a fiduciary unit. You are accountable to this community just as much as the superintendent is committed to you and the community about spending the money correctly. So we may have lots that may need to happen. The question is it a want or is it a need? And if it's a need or a safety issue, then is it part of the big plan? Is it part of what we want to do and need to do? Or is it something it would be more of a want? And we got to then prioritize that list like any other list. You put your list together, and we work at it little by little, because those, again, won't offset the budget. We can spend a little money, get that done. I don't have to do that for another 10 years, right? I don't have a reoccurrence and expenditure for that. So we prioritize those and get what we can get done and move forward. We're going to make everyone happy? No. I'm sorry, but we will do our best to do the best we can with the money we have and do right by it.
Speaking of safety, our schools are not air conditioned. Climate change has caused heat waves that make classrooms overly hot, humid, and miserable. What plan would you put in place to keep students and staff safe and able to function when the weather is hot and humid?
So we've obviously lived with this. This is not new to us here, correct? So this is just an ongoing problem. The question becomes, is there a way we can look at actually starting to move to air conditioning? We may not be able to, it may not be financially affordable, but that's something, again, through strategic planning, can we look and see if that's something we want to be able and can do? Because let's be real, no one wants to teach in a hot classroom, I get that, no one wants to do that. So when it gets to a point where we've got to have some conversation as a board and everything else about what is the guidelines we're going to follow then. Because MHSAA gives really great guidelines about practice, and we usually utilize those guidelines in our own classrooms as well. But when we get to a certain point where we know the temperature is too hot, we have fans that are just blowing hot air around, the question becomes, was it worth being in the classroom that day? Were we getting anything done? But the other part of that is, okay, if we send them home, it's a hot day, and we send them home, where do we send them home to? We could be sending them home to an unsupervised home that's also hot. So then there's these pieces we've got to work through and figure out, can we do with what we're doing and make sure that it's comfortable as it can be? Because I understand it's not the greatest. And we might have to be, I would hope to God, you had a leader who said you can wear shorts as a teacher on those days. I had a very great superintendent, like, if we had certain, like, we knew it was going to be shorts day. Like, you didn't have to ask for permission, like, you knew it was going to happen. And I don't, there are some districts that don't, it just boggles my mind. But we need to look at those things. Obviously, we've done it here, we just need to continue to do it and see how we can get better at it.
All right, stakeholders. Many times the district does not hear from them until something goes wrong. How will you encourage, inform, and communicate with all stakeholders in an effort to build trust, foster transparency, and build a positive community around the school district and within?
So we'll always have naysayers, we'll always have negative out there. And it's so easy today to be a keyboard warrior and just put it on Facebook if you're lucky. So we've got to figure out how to do what I talked about earlier, about two-way channel, two-way feedback communication, where we've got to be willing to solicit that, and put it out there. And when I was in Plymouth, one of the things we did is we had where you could submit, if you had a question, a concern, we had that, God knows what was going to come through, but you had to be willing to accept that. And a lot of times it was anonymous. Didn't like that, but hey, here's what we did though. Once we got those, we triaged them, we figured out who we sent them to. So it might have been my building, could have been the high school, wherever it went to. And then we responded to that. So not only did we put the question that was asked, so then we put it back out on the web and said, hey, we were asked the following questions. Here are our responses to that. Now here's the thing. That's about as best we're going to get. But at least we can be proactive enough to say, hey, we're going to ask what is good, bad, and ugly, and we'll address it. And oh, by the way, if you didn't like the answer, or you still think there's a problem, stop being anonymous. Come into the office and have a conversation with us. Because we do, you know what I mean, we do want to do better, we want to, but if you're going to stay out there and want to be anonymous, I don't know if we give too much credit to that. We can address it and then move on. If you want to put your name on it, want to come and have a conversation, again, anonymous conversation, that's fine. But come on in, let's have a conversation about it. We should be able to do that. If we can't do that, then I think we've lost all civility in what we do in this way. So yes, two-way channels there. We've got to be able to be getting out there. So when you see a negative post, we've got to be willing to respond to it. I'll give you a great example. 70 degrees one day, it was 32 the next. It's Michigan, it happens. Parent gets on, puts on Facebook. The kids were standing outside in the cold, on and on and on. Well, it was 70 degrees yesterday. I'm sorry, you sent your kid with shorts again. It's 32 degrees. Who really has the problem? Now, I didn't say that, but that's what I'm thinking, right? Principal says, I'm getting beat up on Facebook. I said, what was your response? She goes, what do you mean? So the response is, hey, make sure you check the weather today and plan appropriately for your child. Next. I'm done getting beat up here in education. I hope you are too. We address it and move on. That parent is now one of our best cheerleaders and is working better to put nice things up because we addressed it. That's what we have to do. And again, it's how we go about it. We got to be careful.
All right, so our last question, do you have any questions for us or closing remarks before you leave today?
I feel like this was terribly too long, so I apologize. I ran over time. So, no, I'm going to stop and say I really appreciate it. I learned a lot today. Thank you for having me here today. You have a tough choice. Wherever you land, I understand. If I'm a guy, great. If not, I understand. You have a really tough choice. And it was a true pleasure to have been here today, to take a personal day. Still feel like guilt that I was doing the job, but it was a true pleasure to be here today. So thank you.
Well, thank you for spending the day in our district and with our staff, and we appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you.
Take about 10.
What do you think, Wayne?
I'm gonna use it while I get glasses.
You know, I can leave it so you don't have to. I just did the person thing, yeah. You can even go phonetically and I will get it. I painstakingly printed it. Hey, you're dialing it up on the screen. Yeah. I'm saying. Yeah. Are you writing?
Anyone else have any more comment sheets?
Do you have a comment sheet? Comment sheet?
Great.
Oh, thanks, Crystal. Appreciate it. So Dana.
Oh, yeah, they're 6 times in May, yeah. Yeah, I was so bored. So Jason had said, and then he said that, as much as I thought it was Rachel, Jones, not a business, manager. So I thought Rachel was going to buy with my $100. Or add to the show fine, so I was just like, what, right? So I was just in.
Thank you for reading it. I tried to write really slow and I couldn't sneeze a bit. So.
I've had so much running.
So is Dave ready for school to be done yet? Correct.
He's a good
He's always happy to watch. He's smiling. He's just,
very
oh yeah.
Well, you know what, I got an email yesterday from Mrs. McVeigh saying, Josh received it, and as a parent, I don't care about the accuracy. I mean, I do, but like, foremost, I want you to stand up for them to understand. I want you to do what's right. When, yes, it's gonna, you're gonna have to wait 40 extra seconds to wait for the thing to come in, and she's so slow.
Yeah.
Hold the door,
Yeah.
do
Do the right
meaningful,
thing.
yeah. So that's what I
Yeah.
was just asking everybody else, when
No, I mean, he's being very honest, and seems like he's a really good interviewer. I mean, he's very honest. He seems like he's done it at levels. Worked his way through. A good idea. I don't know. I wasn't able to be at the other two interview sessions, so I really don't have anything to judge it by. But there's other candidates. Yep. Thank you. You bet.
Can't get into.
Huh? I had a,
Hey, Wayne. Wayne. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Call her, or set up a meeting with her Tuesday.
Yep.
I mean, she was even thinking of getting a lawyer.
Really?
Yeah, about
Got two, are they twins?
yeah.
Fourth or fifth
Yeah.
grade, something like that?
That I do
Fourth
not
grade.
know.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
they're
So I called her
ninth.
back, and we're meeting Tuesday, I believe, yeah.
Yeah, I just said, you know, you might as well sit there and go talk to you. Said you talk to the other people in there.
Talking to her, yeah.
You got a quick turnaround. You got a quick turnaround.
This is 10 minutes longer.
I don't count that. Right, you give your 2 cents worth of your 2 cents.
Sometimes. That's okay.
I was gonna say, he's living in, he works in Granville. He works in Granville.
He works in
He's got
Granville?
a summer job. Where does he work? It's a retail store.
Okay.
He makes his own.
Condominium is, kind of depends where in Granville. Condominium is maybe 15 minutes from the main campus in Grand Valley and maybe 10 minutes from Granville.
Okay. He loves that area. It's just, it's really proposition there.
Good. What's going to be your major or what is his
IT
major?
or cybersecurity. He's kind of tech kids.
That's great. Does he live on campus?
He did, he lived in the dorm, so he subleased an apartment.
Are most of his classes on main campus or in some in Grand Rapids?
He's gonna have one. So he's got he's a Club Street bus ride. Bus is going
Those buses teach. Well, I taught on main campus too, but I taught downtown.
We were just there.
For a while it was Everhard Center, and then it was Meyerville. They're all named after people that donated money. I'm sure Everhard and Meyer. We heard everything. But, no, the school has grown. House first graduate. Only 3 buildings at that time, right? The main campus, nothing downtown, right? The main campus, the 3 buildings are still there, but
It's amazing how much it's changed.
area, I can still remember. You know what, our Gazette class, we're in like cow pasture.
Manicured.
You know, it was just a farm that they bought, not a farm, maybe several farms that
Exactly. Nobody knows.
Probably about as good as your wife did, but this is, right?
How you doing?
We graduated with a B.
I didn't open it.
All right, we have Mr. Horat back with us.
It was earlier.
Test.
There we go.
Test.
No.
Thank you. I'm glad to have this opportunity to show you a little bit about what my vision of a strategic plan would be for Ovid-Elsie. Clicker does work, good. I spent some time thinking about the vision that I was tasked for this. And the strategic plan, it does reflect the district's long-term aspirations for student success, staff excellence, community engagement. It serves a unifying vision that inspires continuous improvement and guides the district in fostering learning environments that build upon the strengths of the community. The presentation, I think Dan pulled off a little bit earlier before there's edits being made. So this isn't actually the one that they have copies of. So I don't know if there are going to be some discrepancies in that. I like the one I have on there in your packet better, because it's shorter and it does foster the community aspect of it. I think it's important also to ask the question, why should you have a strategic plan? I will tell you that when I became superintendent at Fowler, we talked about the possibility of it, and the board decided not to have a plan at that time. We were still dealing with COVID, and we were also working on a construction project. We were right in the middle of that. So they decided to just have goals, and that's what we adopted each year, was new goals, and didn't have a strategic plan. But it really feels important, especially with a new superintendent coming on board. There are three main reasons that I feel are important. We need to have established clear priorities and unified goals. This is very important when the board and superintendent start developing a new relationship. It also helps strengthen accountability and build trust. And we need to align our resources for what students need most. And that's where the focus always comes back to, is the students. The key components. What I did when I was researching different processes, the two that are used most common in Michigan are from MASA and MASB, Michigan Association of School Boards, Michigan Association of School Administrators. And I looked at both of them and compared what they had, and these are the 5 things that were common between the two plans. You need to have data-driven decision-making. You can't just make assumptions, you have to actually look at data. Now, I know that we have a lot of good data here in the district. I talked with Scott Kenishek at CC RISA earlier this week, and he said he was just in the district last week working with administrators. He shared a district profile that had probably more data than they could ever possibly use. So I'm really encouraged that the district is already using data and that CC RISA is supporting them in doing that. We need to have meaningful stakeholder engagement. This is board members, superintendent, administrators, parents, students, community members, support staff, teachers. We need everybody who's a stakeholder represented in this process. We need to hear voices from everyone. You need to have alignment with the mission and vision. Part of this process is looking at your mission and vision and either reaffirming or making possible changes to it. And so everything has to be aligned with that. There's a commitment to continuous improvement. This has to be revisited on a regular basis. And if it's not, then it just goes in a binder and sets up on a shelf. But it needs to be a live document needs to be referred to often, especially when making tough decisions. And then there needs to be strategic resource alignment, which, again, it helps us to determine where our budget money should go. Okay? Is it part of our strategic plan? Is it going to help our kids? And that's another key component. So the actual development of the plan, steps for that. You initiate the planning process, and this is where the general team is formed, again, with all the stakeholders. And it's also a place where you talk about what the process is going to include, timeline, and different guidelines for that. You conduct a comprehensive needs assessment. This is where we use our data for demographics, for academics, but it also includes more than just that. This is a point where we would do a facility needs assessment. In talking with some of the principals today, when I was doing my tour of the district, it sounds like there was one done within the last year or two. I remember somebody coming around to the different buildings with Cody asking questions, so I'm guessing that was a needs assessment. And so that's important because you want to look at your facilities and you have to anticipate what sort of things are going to be coming up in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, so you can plan long-term for those. You need to engage the stakeholders. And this is where probably the most important part of it is. This is where you communicate with the community. You can't just send out a survey and say, complete this. This has to be more engaging. This has to be where we hold open meetings. We go out in the community. I might go to different community meetings that already take place. And we want to get input back for what our plan is going to be. After we get from the, should I turn this on again? Worry about it? Okay. Once we get input from the community, and that includes everybody that works here too, then we get into the work of developing what the plan is going to be. We take a look at our mission, our vision, and our core values. The core values, we look at what input we get from the community, and that could be, integrity, could be hard work, could be things like that that they tell us are important for students here at Ovid-Elsie, what they want to see. And that becomes part of our plan. Once those are defined, we set strategic goals and measurable objectives. Now, a lot of goals that people make are kind of lofty and might be general. Those goals do not work in this type of plan. You have to have specific goals, and they have to be measurable, because you're going to be using data to measure your progress. And if you can't measure your progress, you don't know if you're moving in the right direction. So that's the next step. After that, we develop action plans. This is where different personnel are assigned to different areas, all the different departments, and you come up with different action plans. So I should mention too, the strategic goals is usually 3 to 5 focus areas, is what they recommend. You don't want to have too many, but you also don't want to have just 1 or 2. So 3 to 5 are what's recommended. You develop action plans of how you're gonna, what you're gonna do to try to accomplish those goals. Once you have action plans in place, the next step is you're gonna align resources, and they're always gonna have the student needs as the basis for it. Again, that's with budget, that's with staffing, that's with time. All that is gonna be with the student needs that the community told us, they wanted to see or what's important. Everything's gonna be aligned around that. At that point, we bring it to the board for you to adopt, and then we go out and communicate the plan. And we would take that out to a variety of different ways. One possible way would be a little flyer. I've made a little flyer for you here, just a Q&A really kind of on this presentation. But this would be a perfect way to do and send out information to the community, having different events about what our strategic plan is. I like using flyers for a lot of different ways of communicating. It's also a good tool for attracting school of choice students, that sort of thing. So, just one way, and again, we would want to do that several different ways because we want the community to know that we listen to them and we put this plan together. Here is everything about it. It's fully transparent. And this is what we came up with. And we're going to be going back and looking at it again and making adjustments. And then the last step is to implement, monitor, and adjust. And again, you don't want it just sitting on a binder or on a shelf. You want to make sure that everything is being used and referred to frequently. How am I going to use the strategic plan? That was the last part of what I was asked to do with the presentation. There will be an annual review and action plans. We would update every year if we needed to adjust anything, adjust action plans, we would do that. It would include progress monitoring, where we would obviously look at our data, making sure we're moving in the right direction. The budget alignment, which I talked about before, we make sure that where our money is going is where it's going to help the kids in the areas that we said is important. Professional development is going to be aligned with these same goals. We want to make sure we provide quality professional development for our staff and that it aligns with these goals that we set. We also want to take time to celebrate success. We want to put out good word when things happen. So we would do that a variety of different ways, but it's important to let people know when things are moving in the right direction and celebrate that. And the last point here is culture building. This is like the first step in what the district will be in the future. And so this is developing the culture of what we want Ovid-Elsie area schools to be with a strategic plan. In addition to the flyer, I also gave you a sheet from Mona Shores Public Schools. I always try to look at somebody who might have already completed the process and did an exemplary job. This has a summary in a very easily understood way to get the information out. They have updated again. They have up through 2028, but it was really blurry, and I didn't want to drop that where you couldn't read it. But I like the way this has the triangle at the base. It has the community, and at the top it has our students. I just think that the representation there is what we're looking for here at Ovid-Elsie. Do you have any questions? We cover it now, or?
I guess we kind of skipped a step when we went right to the presentation. So welcome to our new community members that have joined us. Thank you for joining us for the second round interviews of the Ovid-Elsie Area School Superintendent Search. Please note that as members of the audience, if you would like to provide feedback, there are feedback forms on the table. You can also write questions that you would like to be asked at the end of the interview that will be collected. All right, so thank you for coming to meet with us again today. We'll all take turns asking you questions again. So the first question, post-COVID, schools have seen an uptick in behavior issues in children. What are your thoughts on how to curb this issue? How will you support teachers and administrators? How will you support students while also maintaining accountability?
So how to curb the issue, what was the last?
How would you support the teachers and administrators? And how would you support students and maintain accountability?
Thank you. First, I'd like to just thank the board for the opportunity to do the tour today. I had a lot of excellent conversations, and able to get a lot of information, even being in the buildings quite a bit, talking with different people from a different viewpoint. I was able to gather a lot of information, so I greatly appreciate that opportunity. I think the highlight of the tour was when I was walking through Leonard and had several students come up and shake my hand and introduce themselves. And then I get a few feet behind me, and the kid asked, "Who's that?" I said, "The president's here." That made me. I don't know what they went home and told their parents. So behavior is a main concern. When there are behavior issues, there's classroom management hard to really have any true learning happen. And so it is an issue that's important in every single classroom. I was very impressed talking today on my tour, Amanda, as she's in charge of the PBIS for the district, that we have a district coordinator for PBIS. And she is here, that's her purpose, is to help with behavior. And the positive behavior route, rewarding that, is the best way to go. Punitive, it'll work for some severe things, but overall, research has shown that strictly disciplining kids every time is not a long-term answer as far as behavior. We need to teach proper behavior and reward good behavior. That's what the research suggests, and that's been my personal experience. So I was very pleased to hear that's already in place in the district. In terms of supporting teachers, obviously that's one way of supporting teachers, but they also need to know that the building principals and superintendent are going to support them as well. They're in the front line every day, they're working hard, they're developing engaging lesson plans, and if they're constantly dealing with behavior issues, that's something that the principal and myself, we need to work to ensure that that's a minimum and it's not going to disrupt learning. And then the last part was how to hold students accountable. There's a code of discipline. Like I said, you try to reward behavior. If behavior, gets to the point where it is constantly disrupting class, there needs to be consequences, but it needs to be laid out. The student needs to know prior what those consequences are, and it needs to be consistently followed. And when there's a consistent program in place, then it seems to be the best process for having all students behave accordingly. I should mention too, if you have any sort of follow-up, I know this is more of a back and forth tonight, please do that. I'm not the kind of person that talks to fill time, and so if I answer a question and you want to know more, please ask me that.
I'd like to ask you a question on that. And, how would you get the parents to buy in more in that? Because a lot of the discipline starts at home, and have you done that in the past, given, in all your educational experience?
I found the best way to work with that, if there's any resistance, is to have face-to-face meetings with parents. Everybody wants to have students succeed, so the same goal is there. And when there's disruptions in the classroom, it's not just their student that's affected. They have to understand too that other students are affected by that disruption. The parents should need to know what expectations are and consequences for behavior. But having personal conversations when there's any sort of conflict and face-to-face meetings is the best way, in my opinion, to do that.
Okay, unfortunately, crisis events and trauma can happen in schools. How have you managed through crisis situations to ensure students' safety and maintain continuity in education?
Okay. Yeah, this topic is one of the scariest for anybody in education because you never know what might happen. And because of that, safety of staff and students is the most important thing in any school. You have to have safety or nothing else can happen. As far as an example, I've had several examples. We had back during COVID, we had threats. It was at a school board meeting. We had a command center set up, hidden outside, and luckily nothing came of it. But it was a very tense moment. It really didn't involve students, but involved board members and community members. So that was probably one of the ones that was pretty tense for me. Quite often, these will come in the form of students making threats. And a student might make a threat to kill somebody or have a weapon or to shoot somebody or something of that nature. And those have to be taken extremely seriously. If a threat's made, the student has to be removed. And you have to be careful. There has to be a system in place, which I'm sure Ovid-Elsie has a system, where the students are removed from wherever they're at in the school. The parent comes in, they're searched, their locker searched, to make sure that they don't have a weapon. We involve police every time there's any sort of threat. We I never felt comfortable making a judgment, I think it's not real. I want to know, you know, what their home life is. I'm going to request that the police do a home visit as well. And you know, every situation is different, and that's why these situations are tough. So the most important thing that any administrator can do is attend all the trainings that they offer. When the police have their trainings, for example, you know, they'll come to different schools and do active shooter trainings. And I always made a point to attend every one of them. I've attended 2 here at Ovid-Elsie. One of them was an active shooter in the building where there was a hostage. The hostage was in the metal shop. And just watching and learning the process of what they do helped me as an administrator know, okay, what are they going to be doing? You know, what can I be doing as an administrator to know where, you know, if something happened, where can I get my students to safety, knowing what they're going to do. And the hostage situation was a really good learning environment for the police as well, because the hostage, they got the hostage out, and only 2 of the 8 officers searched the hostage. The hostage had a gun, they were part of the whole thing. And so it was a great, I learned a lot. It's like, okay, if there's 2 people, don't assume what you think, you know, might be happening. There needs to be protocol, and so that was an incredible learning experience. The other one was they had a command center set up. I think they had a situation somewhere in this area. They had a command center set up out in the parking lot, and I was able to witness, you know, where they would have a command center based on, you know, where the different situation was happening. I got to see what they did inside the command center, and also got to observe, you know, them with different tools, and you know, they can fly over and see whatever they want now, and it's just amazing what they can do. So yeah, every situation is different. You have to take everything serious. I work very close with the police. Sheriff Dush has always been extremely responsive. I've never had to wait more than 2 minutes when I texted him and said I had an emergency. He calls me immediately. And it's just an amazing response that we have from our law enforcement. They care too. They work really close with the emergency operation plan. I know you guys just approved it recently in the last meeting or 2. It gets approved every year. And if Sheriff Dush signs off on the EOP, then we know it's a good one. And that's one of the first things I would do is obviously become very familiar with the emergency operating plan.
So just to follow up on that a little bit, drill down a little deeper. So in your tour today, did you see any maybe holes that we have in our safety, or are there any ideas you have to implement new safety methods here?
There's always things you can do. And I know they had a safety analysis done. Somebody came through the building, the principal called maybe last year, and did point out a few possible recommendations. For example, at EE night, when you buzz in, you come right through 2 different doors. It might make more sense, you know, you could maybe have them wait inside the door, so inside the first door, so you can see them before they come in, or have them actually, you know, buzz in twice just as an added extra measure in case, you know, they got through the first one, and you know, just small things like that. You know, Ovid-Elsie does a good job with student safety, but you're always looking for ways to improve. I know one of the state grants that came out 3 years ago had a safety analysis at every district. That was part of it, and that was very beneficial for so many districts.
Tell us about a situation that required your current board's understanding of pros, cons, and alternative solutions to a problem. What was done by you or others to assist the board in its understanding of the issues?
I would say one that sticks out in my mind is there was a decision that had to be made in the last phase of the bond at Fowler. Phase 2 was the main portion of the bond. It was a total of a $17 million project, building an athletic center. And the athletic center was done, and the last part of the bond was going to be used to repair as much of the roof as possible, and then a list of several other things that were important to a lot of different board members. As we went through the project, luckily, the main part of it, the athletic center, had low construction costs. But as we're working on that, they started rising pretty rapidly. You might remember that 2 years ago when things started going up in price. So we had a problem where we didn't know, how much we could get done, but we know we weren't going to be able to get everything done. And so I worked with the board on looking at a process of trying to choose, and everybody has things that's near and dear to their heart, but we had to make a choice. And one thing we did to help get a lot of other things done is on the roof portion. I had a complete moisture analysis done on the roof, where they take core samples, and you can tell exactly where there might be any possible water problems and where the roof is in really good shape. So we had that a complete analysis done, so we knew exactly where any problem areas were, and we were able to focus in on those areas, save money by only focusing on those areas at that time, and we were able to get almost everything else done that we wanted. We were able to put up the bus canopy that they wanted over the buses out, the buses just stay outside. Everything else, including remodeling of the wood shop, which was a high priority item, that all was completed.
If you get overwhelmed in a position and have an issue where you do not know the answer, whether it be budget, curriculum, behavior, etc., where will you turn for support?
Well, I've got a long list of people that I talk to and I get help from. Other superintendents are a huge help because everybody's going through a lot of the same things. I found it very valuable to go to, it's called a small schools conference, and it puts you in with other superintendents around the state and that are in large schools. And small schools, they have unique problems. And so getting a network of people with similar problems is very beneficial. If it's something like budget, curriculum, I would, the people that I trust and are very knowledgeable in those areas, that's who I would talk to. And over the course of my career, I've developed quite an extensive network in getting help when I need it. And also, MASA is very good about assigning mentors. And if it was an area where I'm struggling, I'm going to ask them for a mentor. That comes with membership for free. So why not do that? But I have no problem asking for help. The last thing I want to do is, try to work through something, think I might know what it is, but if I'm not sure, I don't want to put the district and our kids at risk of making a mistake that might cost us.
Tell us about a time in your professional life when you needed to be true to your personal integrity, even though there were or could have been negative consequences for you. In other words, tell us about a time when you had to stand up for what you believe and face opposition.
I'm trying to think of a specific example. That's how I live my life, is, always trying to stand up for what's right and integrity. I guess when we initiated a way of evaluating teachers, we adopted the 5E plus, which Ovid-Elsie has here. When we implemented that, there's ways you can implement it fast and just try to get through the process. And it is the easier way, but it's not the right way. And so we took our time, we got trained together with staff on what the process is. We did focus in on just one dimension initially, so it wasn't overwhelming for everybody. But we didn't want to take the shortcut. Some schools were throwing in all 5 dimensions at once. And if you're doing that, it's a disservice to everybody, and there's going to be inflating and evaluation scores. So that's one area, I guess, where I feel integrity, and it was good for all of us.
Tell us about a time when you were confronted with a difficult, unexpected set of circumstances in which you lacked the answers. How did you deal with the circumstance?
Well, a difficult time might be when you have an irate person at a sporting event. For example, when I was a fowler, there was one of the referees came over to me and told me that I needed to remove a student who was being unruly. So I don't question the ref. I removed the student, which I did. The student left without confrontation. But one of the people in the stands, which it was not his parent, I found later, I thought it was, took a strong exception to that and came and was just very belligerent. And so what I did there was I just worked hard to try to get him, first of all, out of the gym and into an area where there weren't other people, because my feeling is a lot of times in a situation like that, they like to have an audience. So I separate them from that and talk to them, just one-on-one, calm them down. Come to find out after the fact, the other school's administration said that they've been having a lot of issues with that person, and actually there've been trespass orders and all those sorts of things. I guess that would be an example.
Let's say the district is running a deficit budget that needs to be corrected. What steps will you take to do that? And do you have ideas on generating revenue rather than cutting services?
Well, the steps, if you have a strong strategic plan in place, the steps would obviously go back to relating what those goals are. It's always important when you have to make cuts to look at staff. I'm fortunate that I've never had to work through a layoff in my career. We've always been able to work through attrition when we've had to cut positions. I know it's very difficult when certain teachers can't teach what they always enjoy teaching. Shifts have to happen, but they understand too. I think it's important to build trust with the staff. You be transparent with the numbers. If somebody's going to have to make a sacrifice, I want them to fully understand what's going on budgetary-wise, so they don't make a sacrifice and then $500,000 we put in the fund equity. That doesn't build much trust. So then you need to work with the staff, be transparent with the numbers, be true to your vision, your strategic plan. In terms of generating revenue, the quickest and easiest way is to attract new students and gain FTEs. And there's a variety of ways of doing that, none of which are really easy, but do you want to expand on that part of it?
There's a question later on.
I'll wait then.
We'll learn that.
Okay. Another way that I generated revenue when I was a fowler was public schools can actually hire special teachers for private schools and can get FTEs for them. So we work to hire phys ed teachers for a private school in Lansing, and we gained FTEs for those. Now there's a lot of rules that go around that, and we did get dinged one year because they changed the way they calculated the numbers and made the blended counts. We didn't get quite as much as we thought we were going to get. But we did generate significant funds by doing that. It just takes, a lot of work, and you have to do it gradually over time to make it very significant. But it is a way of generating money. Unfortunately, there are some districts that really exploit that fact, larger districts, and so it's not always possible to get into the area and to take advantage of that. But it is a way of generating revenue.
Some of our questions are different, and I realize you don't have the follow-up question that someone had asked, so would elaborate on your attracting new students.
Okay. You need to market, what you do well. I'm fortunate that I know a lot of the good things that happen here at OE. I won't pretend to know all the good things, but you need to do a good job of marketing it. I would make sure we highlight our OE graduates and their accomplishments. Again, I don't know, probably just a small fraction, but our ag program is outstanding, very unique here. And from that ag program, I know of 4 students who completed the sports turf management at Michigan State, and 2 of them are in the NFL. And I know one of them really well. How many schools can say that? Starting here with this process at Ovid-Elsie, we have 2 students working in the NFL in an area where there's not many jobs. So things like that. I know we have all kinds of success with OE graduates. Those are some things we need to highlight and recognize them. It also gives our students here, an inspiration, and they can. My dream is to somehow build a mentorship with OE alumni and current students, just to help foster some of those things that people don't know what they want to do, set up more job shadows that way, just to help build a network of Marauders helping Marauders. I just think it'd be an outstanding thing to do. But highlighting our OE grads, I think, is probably one of the best things we can do for student enrollment. I am glad we have a strong preschool program here. I know prior to that, it's been quite a few years, I know we were losing kids that would go to preschool, like at Lanesburg, and they liked it in Lanesburg, and they stayed there all 12 years. And just think of that key that is. And nothing against Ovid-Elsie schools. One of my good friends, his daughter is in high school in Lanesburg. He said, I like Ovid-Elsie, just I really liked my experience there, like the kids they were with, and they stayed there. And so I'm glad to see we have that, but we need to make sure we focus early on, because it's not just high school choice, which is important, but it's also early on. Another idea with that, I wrote down a couple things that I anticipated this question. The realtors in the area. It's important to get them information on our schools, because that's what people are asking about when they're looking for homes. And if we have, a flyer highlighting our district that can hand to parents, when they're moving into the area, they see all the things that we offer for their kids, it would make a difference as well. And then I guess the last thing is, I don't know what work's been done, like when students leave, if you do an exit survey or try to, but I think, contacting those parents, talking with them, asking why students are leaving, so we have a real idea of why they're leaving. I know some situations, it doesn't matter what the school does. If, they get to high school and they want to go to Lansing Catholic, they're going to Lansing Catholic. But there are some that have other reasons why they left. They might be unhappy with something that happened here, and it's important for us to know that, so we can, address things in the future.
Explain your experience in special education and 504 plans and how those experiences translate into your role as superintendent.
Well, with special ed, it's a crucial part of the educational process. My own son has a 504 plan, and that has benefited him greatly with his struggles in the classroom. I am very committed to being actively involved. I've attended countless IEPs. I have such a high regard for our special educators because they put in tremendous amounts of time trying to work different supports and figuring out what's best for each individual student. And I really commend them for that. In terms of my experience, I've overseen caseloads. I've worked hard to try to keep them manageable, which is tough sometimes, especially when budgets are tough. But if they get too high, then they can't have that individual attention that they need. I collaborated closely with CC RISA because they're a great resource, special education services, and countless communications and conversations with families regarding it. We need to make sure that we always stay compliant, the system is in place. We need to document when different accommodations are given, because if you ever end up with a state complaint, you need to have a system in place, otherwise you could be looking at some serious issues.
Based on your past experience, provide us with a specific example of how you get an experienced staff to follow school policy or new policies.
Now, the experienced ones, sometimes the most resistant ones. An example I can think of, I'm going to go back to again when we implemented the 5D teacher evaluation rubric. And the goal or the domain that we were working in was student engagement. And part of that is allowing a lot of student talk with each other, student discussion. It's very important. This teacher's outstanding, since retired, but this teacher was more or less a lecturer, very animated lecturer, but really engaged the students, and most students learned very well from him. And he communicated very clearly. And so we had the conversation about student talk, and he said, well, they just need to listen to me. I said, well, how do you know they're learning? Well, they're looking at me. Well, you really don't know for sure, And he said, well, I don't have time to let them just talk because that's going to waste too much class time. So we brainstormed some ideas and talk about think, pair, share, where you pose a question, give them a few seconds to think about it, you pair them up with somebody real close to them, they discuss it for 20, 30 seconds, and then a select few share it out to the class. It only takes about a minute and a half, 2 minutes total. And he said, I'll try it. So he tried it, and he was able to see that from the discussions the students were having with each other, he could tell right away who got it and who didn't. And it was a light bulb moment for him and for me, because he was really excited about it. And the fact that I would observe him, 2 years later, and he would have 5 or 6 pair shares during a lesson, kind of made me feel good. And the kids really got used to it, and it was nice to see a veteran take advantage of the opportunity and learn from it.
In preparation for interviewing at Ovid-Elsie, you have researched the district. After your research, what are some possible changes that you foresee making to have a positive difference in our school district?
Well, I have looked at some of the data. I mentioned in the last week that I looked at last year's audit, which was good. There was just a minor thing as far as procedure that they recommended, which I'm assuming that was changed. I don't like to say what I would come in and change because that's not my style. I like to listen. I mentioned last week, my first thing would be to meet with every individual in the district, every staff member. And from that, I would gain a lot of knowledge. I don't see myself coming in and making a ton of changes right away. I don't think staff appreciates somebody coming in and telling them what to do when they haven't been here and may not know the whole situation. But I'm not scared to make those changes when they need to be made. Part of the whole strategic plan, which I think would be a perfect time with the new superintendent coming in, part of that is accountability. And accountability is huge. Accountability for me, accountability for staff, students, and I think that is something that could come from it. One thing that I would like to see the district explore, I know we've been affected by suicide, and it's affected a lot of us. Not just at Ovid-Elsie, but Ovid-Elsie has seen a large share of that. And I know there are several different suicide prevention plans, but I would like to see us explore if that's a possibility of doing something. And again, that's something we can work with the community on as well.
I have a question. Just give me a second. I guess I don't need this, but, you said meet with staff. Would that be a one-on-one meeting with each staff or?
Yes.
groups?
Yeah, one-on-one meeting with each staff. What my goal is, and yes, it takes a lot of time, but that was the most beneficial thing I did when I started Fowler, because I got to know every staff member. I want to know, how many kids they have. I want to know what they do. I want to know about them. I want them to know about me, because you have to develop a personal relationship. And so it's about a half-hour meeting, and I want to hear what strengths the district has, what challenges the district have, what their personal goals are, and I just want to get to know them and where they want to go in their career and what their families are.
Provide an example of a time when someone whom you supervised disagreed with you, and what was the outcome?
Well, it kind of goes with that one with the teacher who didn't want to do the, student talk. There's really not a specific example I can think of where, somebody was defiant and said, I'm not going to do that. Because there might be disagreements about budget. I think, I'm trying to think of an example I can give. When we had a grant at Fowler, it was a 2-year grant, and I was obviously soliciting input from stakeholders on how we should spend the money. And staff, there were 2 or 3 staff members that were very adamant that we needed to add more teachers. And I'm hesitant to add full-time staff with grant money, just because when it runs out in 2 years, where are we at? I don't want a staff member to get laid off if we can avoid that. But I want to make sure that we're supporting the teachers. Adding teachers would be great. But we talked about why they wanted teachers added, and it dealt with having more smaller classes. So we were able to get some support. We hired a success coach that was for the district with some of that money, and we were able to support and help with what some of their needs were without adding full-time teachers. And just a little bit more with that success coach. I also had an ulterior motive because she had just finished up student teaching in science, and we had a science teacher that was retiring, so I wanted to try to keep her in the district because I knew those teachers are very hard to find. So I kind of had an ulterior motive for that. We were able to keep her in the district as a success coach for 2 years, and then she took over for that teacher when they retired.
Being a lifelong resident of Elsie and a graduate of OE, you have many friends and relatives who live and or work in the district. How do you see yourself balancing the personal connections with holding people accountable and being objective as the superintendent?
Well, first of all, I should never be a direct supervisor for a relative, okay? And I know you're aware that my wife works here, and if we've had a conversation, if the board did not feel comfortable with that arrangement, then she would agree to resign. She feels it's important if I want to pursue this, and the board didn't like that arrangement, she would feel comfortable with doing that. She loves her job, but the district has to come first. Okay? When I worked in Fowler, I had several relatives there, and you need to make sure positions are defined, and evaluations need to be based on criteria that's already selected prior. Whether it's for a custodial position or anything, you need to make sure that everything is spelled out beforehand and it's a process. I can't evaluate anybody that, is a relative of mine. There are a lot of good people here, and a lot of good friends that I have, and I don't want that to be a deterrent either. Okay, so I think we just would need to make sure there's a process that the board is comfortable with. If we hired somebody, I'd be open and honest, say, we're hiring Dave Fowler as custodian, he's my best friend in high school, and I want you to know we've been good friends, and I would not be in charge of, evaluating him in any way.
In your first interview, you mentioned experiences in human resources, but it appeared limited. Please elaborate more on your experience in human resources and how you will go about closing the gap on lack of experience and knowledge in that area.
Well, I probably didn't answer that question fully, I guess, because I do have a fair amount of experience. In terms of recruiting staff, I have done, I work with a lot of different associations trying to recruit staff. In terms of hiring, I've been in charge of the whole process in many different ways. St. John's and at Fowler, I would develop rubrics that we would use for the hiring process, just to help select differences between candidates. And I would also, oversee the whole process of selecting the candidates and who we're going to interview, and prior to interviewing, how we might want to narrow them down once we get them in. So I do have extensive experience with that. Evaluating and supervising staff, again, I've worked with that for quite a few years. I've worked with evaluating support staff, teachers. When I was in St. John, it was probably my highest supervision workload with about 70 staff that I directly supervised and evaluated. And I've also worked extensively with school policy, implementing school policy. When I was at Fowler, they were actually still using policy that was in the binders. And when I wanted to search to try to find something and I couldn't hit Alt-F, I was trying to pull my hair out. That's why I think there's so much left here. But transitioning that to electronic policies with Neola and working with the board on that process, going through the different policies and what would be unique for Fowler, and not just taking the boilerplate language when it didn't work for us, I thought was also a very important thing. So I have quite a bit of experience with that. School law, that's an area where any administrator has to stay current on. And we're very fortunate that our associations, the MASA and MASB, provide different legal seminars. When I became superintendent, I still got my MASSP for the principals. They offer good trainings, but also free legal service. So when I have legal questions, if I can call and get an answer for free, then I'm going to do that, save the district money. Now, if it's something where there's going to be potential litigation, then I would want to go the proper channel. But a lot of times it's just we have questions about things, and if you call the lawyer every time you have a question, it can add up in a hurry. So I think taking advantage of what the associations offer is important as well. Is there anything specific other than human resources? I haven't really worked with distributing insurances and that sort of thing.
No, you answered it. I remember this discussion, and I was just looking back at my first interview notes, where you did explain your recruiting and retaining, but my question I wanted to hear more about your supervision and policy, which you just explained.
Okay.
So, yes.
Ovid-Elsie has relatively new or brand new people working as business manager, curriculum director, and in human resources. Explain how you would onboard or orient these people in their new positions, especially with you being new to the district.
Have we hired a business manager yet? Okay, so we're still in that process. I was able to meet the curriculum director, and I know the young lady that works in human resources. I think it's important to give them support from somebody who is knowledgeable in that area. CC RISA is a good place to start because they have a lot of resources available. But I would, using my experience and my contacts, I would put them in touch, see if I can get like a retired business manager to spend some time with a brand new one, just to go through processes. Curriculum director, I know they have their monthly curriculum meetings with the county, and so they make connections there. But it's important to have connections beyond that as well. So I would work to provide mentorship for them from somebody that can provide good information.
Okay, I think I have the last question. As superintendent, you have 7 different bosses with possibly 7 different views on how to manage a district. What will you do to proactively get the 7 individuals to work with you as a team? And explain what you will do to create a high-functioning team.
Okay. In addition to a strategic plan, which lends itself right to that process, I want to make sure I'm always clear that I work for the full board, not individual board members, but I do have to have individual communications. Okay? I respect the fact that everybody's going to have individual ideas, but we all have to respect the fact that you're a full board, and we have to make decisions as a board, and we need to honor each other's perspectives. I would work on keeping everyone focused and aligned with district goals. Actively listen to each person's ideas and really listen to them. Make sure they feel they're heard and know that they're heard. When there's multiple ideas, quite often, as you work through them, you can look for commonalities. And from those commonalities, you can sometimes put together solutions to a problem. So that's one way. When there has to be a difficult decision, you may incorporate some sort of decision-making process to go through. There are multiple ones you can use. That's another way of doing that. But I think you would want to work toward building trust, unity with open communication, honesty, being fully transparent. This size of group is something I'm quite comfortable with. I have a family of 8, and I grew up with a family of 9. So it's a size that I'm pretty comfortable with.
All right, so we have some community questions for you. Our schools are not air conditioned. Climate change has caused heat waves that make classrooms overly hot, humid, and miserable. What plan would you put in place to keep students and staff safe and able to function when the weather is hot and humid?
My wife here yet? Sounds like a question from her. Her office gets quite hot. That's a difficult one, because obviously there's a pretty large expense if you're just going to install air conditioning. If you can increase the air circulation, and I know they've tried different things, it's a difficult one. There's no easy answer for that. I am open to, if there's dangerous levels of heat, of canceling school or adjusting times if we had to, or shortening the day if we had to. But I would love to look at a long-range plan where we could, ask our community, and if the strategic plan showed that this was, something that they'd be interested in, I would love to be able to add air conditioning to our buildings. It's something that has become more difficult, and it makes it very tough, especially on teachers when they're working all day, just to be drained, and not just from the students, but then the heat on top of that, and it's a tough one.
Stakeholders, many times the district does not hear from them until something goes wrong. How will you encourage, inform, and communicate with all stakeholders in an effort to build trust, foster transparency, and build a positive community around blend within?
Okay. Well, I guess the strategic plan would help, lend itself to that by reaching out. But I think in terms of, me going out in the community and talking and speaking on behalf of the school, I want to let people in the community know that I have an open door policy. As part of my, meetings with staff, I also, I mentioned before, we meet with board members, but it also, based on those conversations with you, set up meetings with people in the community who you felt I should meet with and talk to. I think that's the first step, is to start making those connections and just putting myself out there and talking and being open and honest. Everything has to be transparent. I would like to see us, be sharing more on the website, in terms of whatever we can legally, but especially in terms of budget and everything, just whatever, if we were able to have software that shows everything nice, clean and easy, I'd love to see something like that.
What have you done in the past to market a school district you've been in? Did it work? What was the outcome? What do you think could work here at Ovid-Elsie Area Schools?
I kind of addressed that a little bit with, how I increased, try to increase enrollment. What I have done in the past, in St. John's, I made a lot of connections with the community. I talked a lot with families when they were considering school of choice, or either way, whether they're thinking of leaving or coming, and just having a lot of conversations. If there's a better fit for a student and it's not in the district I'm in, I'm not going to tell a student they should come, because I want what's best for the student. But I think it's important to let them see the full picture and see what our district offers them, and show them that it could be the best place for them. But in terms of marketing, you can do all sorts of things, like make flyers, do things, but it's important to make the community connections.
If a district has an above-average fund balance, would you utilize those funds, and how would you prioritize that spending?
You have to look at the long-term plan, and it's tough when you have extra money because everybody wants to spend it, including me. I don't want to see us sit on money that can be used for kids. But if times are good, and it looks like times are going to be good for the next 2, 3, 4 years, then I think that's where you would go back to your mission, vision, and core values, and look at where we might want to spend some of that in a way that would support our students. You have to be careful, because if things turn, then you don't want to risk having to lay people off because you didn't get the increases from the state that you thought. But I'm not one for building huge fund equities. You have to have a safe fund equity, but you don't want one that's going to be taking away from what the students need.
What can you do to show teachers that they are valued and appreciated?
Get to know them, support them any way I can, visit their classroom, encourage them. There's no one set way of doing it, but all my actions, that's really my goal is to show them that I care and I want them to succeed, because I want our students to succeed. Being a teacher for 14 years, 15 years, I've been in the trenches, and I have such a great appreciation for what they do and how they help kids develop, and so I will do everything I could to support them.
Before I ask the last one, does anyone else have follow-up questions? Okay. So do you have any questions for us or closing remarks before you leave?
Okay. I guess I would just ask, what's the one single most important characteristic that you think that our next superintendent should have?
Integrity.
I would say authenticity.
Well, they used some of my answers, to follow through, to see from start to finish the follow through.
The connection between staff, students, community, everybody, just that connection.
Commitment.
I would say a good listener and someone who's able to make decisions, hard decisions sometimes.
And for my closing remarks, I talked to Jerome last time, so I won't be too long with this, but it's an honor for me to even be here, interviewing for this position. I'm a proud Wayne grad, I've been here my whole life. My kids have been here, love the district, and there's nothing I love more than to serve the staff and students of Ovid-Elsie.
We appreciate your continued interest in the position and for being here with us tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Usual drill, if you get them. Any feedback forms, we'll collect them and.
So we're just going to take a 10-minute recess.
Yeah, we'll get a chance to copy them and then go back and start looking over the forms that came back to you and put your notes together, and we'll have a discussion here about 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't get a chance
Can I trade my lifesavers for those?
That's some duct tape.
So you can take.
Just saw your text. Yeah. I would say. Wow. I know that. I mean, I know you're from school. I know. That's mandatory. That's not why we did it.
Is it on a Sunday in the middle of the day?
No, some of them are Friday. A lot of them are like Friday nights. which are kind of weird too.
Yeah, I mean, someone said like Friday night, like why don't we do it on a Thursday? Like, you know, and if the sun's going down, turn the stadium lights on or something does right. And it made sense because, you know, if you look at it, I mean, in all honesty, if you look at the high school, am I the only one that lives in the
I
district?
was gonna say, I was thinking about that.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And you can't
There's a
say.
couple nearby, but it's not.
Yeah, and I don't think you can now say with the charter we have that Tough Rocks, you could have lived in the district.
Yeah, no.
It's your problem. You know what I'm saying? I think we gotta be, right,
Wherever
right,
they
yeah, right. So like, I think it's like, we're thankful that you drive. You know what I'm saying? Thank you for driving an hour because we can, yeah, absolutely. So that, and so I was like, okay, well that, yeah, that makes sense. I mean,
I just often think about that. How that's,
yeah, and I know he pushes for it because he likes us to
he
do
really
that.
likes stuff.
Yeah.
Just thinks it's good.
But
Well,
then,
I understand that.
but then maybe he needs to say, okay, well then let's do this on a Thursday night.